As the last project in the Ancient Pottery Challenge this season, I've made this Sosi black on white pitcher, and today I'm out here to fire it. It's been a long journey going from raw clay to firing, and today I'm going to show you that whole process. So let's go back, show you how I made it, and then come back here and we'll get it fired. The first thing I'm going to need to make this pot is a good gray body clay. And since when I started this project I was just back from the Colorado Plateau where I had collected a bunch of new clays, I decided to use one of those new clays I'd never tried before. So here I am grinding up, this is what I call upper cottonwood gray that I collected along the Mogollon Rim back in September. Now this didn't come from the Tucson area where this Sosi black on white would have been made, but I rarely get up into that part of Arizona, and most of that land is Indian reservation where I can't collect clays anyway. So this is close enough clay. Here I am mixing the ground clay with temper at about a rate of 20% by volume. And so I'm just measuring out my clay. I've got almost 5 scoops of clay, which means I need 1 1/4 scoops of temper in order to get 20%. And in this case, I'm using sand temper because that's what Sosi black on white would have used historically. It's good if you can mix up your clay like this a day or two before you plan on using it, because in that first day or so, that clay is going to become more and more plastic. In this case, this is a couple days before I started making the pot. So by the time I'm ready, it's going to be good. Now I've got it all mixed up. That clay is going to continue to kind of soak in that moisture for those first couple of days. So what I'm going to do is put some holes in the clay block and pour some water in. And then over the course of the next day or two, that'll kind of soak into the clay. All right, today I'm ready to finish up the Ancient Pottery Challenge for this season by making the last element, that Sosi black on white pitcher. The puki I'm using is one of these that I sell on my website. This is a great size and shape that I use for beginner potters. This is what I have in my workshops. And so I'm using this today as the foundation because the pot I'm making is 6 inches wide by 7 inches tall, or thereabouts. I'm just going to start out by patting out a slab of clay, what I sometimes call a pancake or a tortilla of clay, and then press that into my puki. So optimally, I would like to have about 1 inch sticking up above the edge of the puki so I have something to attach that first coil to. This pancake of clay came out a little bit rectangular, so I've got a low spot on either side that I'm going to have to fill in before I'm ready to attach that first coil. Okay, now that I'm up above the edge, about 1 inch all the way around, I'm ready for that first coil. Sosi black on white was made by the Tucson branch of the ancient Pueblo culture, which is just an archaeologist's way of saying ancestral Hopi. Now the Hopis are famous for their yellowware pottery, but before the Hopis started making yellowware around 1300 AD, they were making a lot of black on white and black on reds. Here are some great examples of ancient Hopi black on white pottery that I found up along Antelope Mesa when I was there in 2021. Whew. Way too wide. Way too wide. Here, bring it in. Much better. Much better. Sometimes it's advantageous to flip the pot over and work on the bottom before you continue building up. And in this case, I've decided to do it because the clay I'm using here is much softer than the clay I usually use. And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to work on the bottom until it's quite dry. So I want to get the bottom kind of taken care of now, so I don't have to do it later when I might mess it up trying to work on the bottom. Oh no! Oh no, I can't believe I did that. Doggone it. You might wonder, What caused ancestral Hopi pottery to change from white to yellow? Well, it might not be what you think. It's not a change in the materials they used. It's not a change in the body clay or the slip or anything like that. It's actually a change in the way it was fired. If I took this same clay that I'm using here and fired it in an oxidation atmosphere, it would come out very warm in color. Maybe not yellow, but maybe a tan or a cream or something on the warm side of the spectrum. However, this black on white pottery that was made up in northern Arizona in those days was all fired in a reduction atmosphere, in a pit in the ground that was smothered. Keeping the oxygen away from it makes it come out white or gray. So the only change required to go from whiteware to yellowware is a change in the firing environment. Here's a photo of some of the older Tucson black on white pottery next to some of the later Hopi yellowware pottery, showing that transition that they made around 1300. I really like this new clay I'm working with. It's really nice, but it's a lot softer than the clays I'm used to using. And so it's getting kind of soft and floppy at this point. I really can't add another coil on it without letting it firm up. Otherwise, I'm just going to ruin it. So after I'm done scraping it on the inside and the outside, I'm going to cover this up loosely and just let it kind of firm up for an hour or two before I come back and keep building. First of all, this clay is softer than my usual clay. It tends to be soft and a little floppy, lacking in wet strength. And so I have to be more careful and kind of let it dry and firm up between different layers. I mean, I can put on a couple of coils at a time, but depending on the size of the coils, like this last one was pretty big, I'm gonna have to let it firm up before I put on another coil. Add to that the clay is already a little damper than I'd like it to be. So it tends to be softer and weaker already. And on top of that, it's a cool, wet, rainy day. So this pot is gonna dry out twice as slow as it would normally. And we have a recipe for a long pottery build. I just let it sit for an hour or two, came back out here, started building. As I said, I put on a big coil and now I'm gonna have to wait some more. But I am getting close. I've probably got another 1.5 inches or so up, maybe 2 inches of build vertically, and I'll be done. Okay, here's where I made a big mistake. So I'm using the hair dryer to dry out the pot. That way I can add another coil because again, it's pretty soft. And wait for it. Boom, look at that. The pot's automatically like 2 inches higher. How'd that happen? Well, I added another coil, my third coil, and forgot to turn on the camera. So at this stage, I am scraping the pot after having added that third coil that you missed. Sorry about that. But now I'm almost where I need to be. I just need one small coil to reach my height. So I'm trimming it off really carefully to make sure that it's really level. That way I can add that coil, smooth it off, and be done. So this is the last coil. Notice it's a lot smaller than the others because I didn't need that much height. Don't forget, I still have to add the handle, but it's gonna have to firm up a lot before I get to that point. And because it's raining outside, that's gonna be a while. I let this sit overnight wrapped up, and it's obvious it's not ready for that handle. The top is still really soft. So I'm gonna do a little bit of smoothing on it, and then I'm gonna let it sit out and dry out a little bit before I try attaching the handle, because this rim is still super soft. At least it's a sunny day. It'll dry a little faster than it did yesterday. Okay, let's talk about handles. First of all, handles in the ancient Southwest were not pulled, such as the way potters are traditionally taught to make handles today. I don't know where that came from. Does anybody know? Leave a comment if you do. I mean, did pulling handles is that a Western tradition? Did that come from like Japan or China? I'm just curious where that pulling handles thing originated. In the ancient Southwest, handles were usually flattened coils, and that's what I'm doing here. The other thing they did in the ancient Southwest was they often rivet attached their handles. That is, they cut a hole through the side of the pot, passed the handle through that, and then flattened it off on the inside like you see me doing here. Now on the lower handle attachment, it's going to be really hard to do a good rivet there because it's down inside the pot. And so there, I'm just going to attach it to the outside. I'm kind of scarifying it with my needle tool, and then I'm getting a little pile of slip there, and I'm just attaching it that way. So it's only riveted on the top, but that will make a nice strong attachment. And then I'm just taking little balls of damp clay to fill in those gaps, make it all nice and smooth. Okay, I got it all formed. I think it's a little bigger than the original. I actually don't know what the size of the original was. I had guessed 6 by 7, and of course it's going to shrink a little. I'm over 7. I'm 7.5 by a little over 7. So I might be in there. I don't really, like I said, it was just a guess. It just seems bigger than the original looking at it, but it's hard to say. I think I got the shape pretty close. The rim's a little wonky, but if you look at the original, I know the rim's broken, but it's also pretty wonky, and that's why I didn't spend a lot of time, leveling the rim, which I could have. One of the things that makes primitive pottery so appealing is that it's wonky, is that it's imperfect. It has that human touch, that wabi-sabi. And so I really think if you make it too perfect, if you take too much time, it looks too modern and it doesn't really have that, to me, that human appeal. So, don't try too hard to make it perfect, because then you lose that special something that makes it different. Now, I have to clean up the bottom. I have to wait until the rim and the handle kind of firm up a little bit so I don't make a mistake. And then, of course, slipping it. I need to slip it with a smectite slip because this gets painted with organic paint. And so that'll be probably tomorrow once it's firmed up a little bit. In the meantime, I'm just going to let this dry. And the bottom I have wrapped in plastic because the bottom's pretty firm. The top is very wet. So I'm trying to let the top dry out a little bit while the bottom doesn't dry out, because my goal is to try to get the whole pot to dry up at roughly the same rate. So the top is as dry as the bottom, which right now it's very uneven. All right. Now it's time to deal with that pesky pookie line, because even when you deal with the bottom of the pot before you build it, as I did here, those pookie lines can still come back to haunt you. So I used a deer rib to scrape it down, scrape off the high points. Then I used some water just to smooth out that crusty texture that was left. I used little bits of damp clay to press into the low spots. And finally, I used a stone around the places where I'd attached the handle, because there were some places where pieces of timber were sticking up. After that, let it dry a little bit until it's ready for slipping. The plan today is to slip the pot. This is that famous cannonball white slip from southwestern Colorado. Cannonball is a smectite clay, so that means it's going to hold on to that organic paint and turn it into black designs in the firing. So that's the key reason I'm using Cannonball to slip this pot. Smectite clays have a high shrinkage rate, so I need to be really careful that I don't get too much on here, or it can start to crackle as it dries. I'm trying to do 2 thin coats over the whole thing, but as you can see, it's really hard not to get it a little thicker in some places and too thin in others. But you do the best you can, and it will become more opaque as it dries. I don't know, it's been a few days since I worked on this. I hope it hasn't dried out too much. No, it's still a little damp because I never got a chance to polish it. So that's what I'll be doing today.
Look at that. Places where the stinking slip is coming off. What the heck? Stinking cannonball. It's never been my favorite. It's very strange because it doesn't feel too damp, but then it's acting weird. So I guess I'll just assume it is too damp and let it dry some more. Pain in the butt cannonball. I gotta moisturize some more of that slip. Let me show you what's been happening. When I first started polishing this, these little specks, like the head of a pin, little spots where the slip was coming loose, was detaching from the body clay. And I wasn't sure what was causing that, but I assumed that perhaps it was too damp. It was not ready to be polished yet. So I let it dry quite a bit more yesterday. And then I also changed stones. So before I was using these naturally smooth beach stones, I changed to these mechanically polished, tumbled rocks, which are glossier, are less likely to kind of grip that slip and maybe pull it away. But it's still going on. So I'm really not sure what's causing that. I'm going to go ahead and let this dry a little bit more in case it is, in fact, too damp. But it seems about right. It could be these two slips, or these two clays. The body clay I used and the cannonball slip don't get along very well. At any rate, I have to get this finished one way or the other. So if it keeps going on even after it dries, I'm just going to have to go ahead. But I will let this dry a little bit, and then we'll come back and try it again in a little while and see if it's any better. Ah, what a bloody mess.
Well, the problem continues. As you can see, I ended up not even polishing the bottom of the pot because it was just exacerbating the problem. But I'm going to go ahead and paint and fire this and see how it comes out. This is organic paint made from Rocky Mountain bee plant, all hydrated and ready to go. And of course I'm using yucca brushes today. I've got those wet so that they're nice and flexible. And then a lot of times when you're working on a complex design, it's good to kind of work the design out on paper before you start painting. This design is very different from what I usually paint. It has no framing lines, just this kind of basket weave design that works its way around the pot, and then these kind of areas in between that. So it's a little different, but it was fun. It was fun trying to figure out how to do it. The secret to organic paint is, first of all, the smectite clay slip. That's critical. But the next is to have the paint of the right consistency. You want the paint to be thin enough that it flows off of the brush and onto the pot easily. But you also want it thick enough that it leaves a nice heavy coat of paint. So you'll see me go over some places twice, and that's when I think that paint isn't thick enough. A lot of people will give it 2 or 3 different coats just to make sure it's thick enough. But I found that if you have the paint at the right consistency to begin with, then that's not a problem. 1 coat will do for almost all of it. All right, I'm ready to get this thing fired. I'm preheating my pot and my kiln furniture around the pit. And then once that's burned down, I will just break up those coals and make a nice solid bed of hot coals, place my kiln furniture, and then place the pot on top of those. Then I'm going to use a small piece of cover sherd over the top to keep the coals off of the pot. Can't see my dots. There they are. 679, 702, 720, 730, 758. It's climbing fast. So here's where I made my big dumb mistake. The wood on the upwind side wasn't lighting because the wind was pushing the fire away from that side. Those logs just weren't really igniting the way they should. And I was worried about the fire. I wanted to all burn down the coals at the same rate. And so I was worried about them, and I was trying to move them in so they would start burning. And I wouldn't just leave it alone, which I should have because it was a really good stack. Stacking the fuel is really important, the way it's stacked so that those coals all fall down evenly around the pot. So it was a good stack, but I couldn't leave it alone. So I moved a bunch of the logs, and then this right here, boop, see that? The whole stack kind of goes over right then. Let me show you again in case you missed it. All the burning sticks and the pot move at this instant over onto their side, and that's a problem. Oh my gosh, the whole pot's tipping over at this point. Doggone it. Oh, what a mess. Oh, goodness. Come here, you. Goodness gracious sakes alive. Doggone it. Idiot. Caused a problem. I don't know if I can fix it. Doggone it. Oh, son of a gun. No, there's no way to fix it. There's no way to fix it. Beyond hope. Doggone it. Ah, son of a gun. Fire in my face. And it seemed like the more I tried to pile the coals and the burning fuel on top of the pot, the more they fell away from the pot and just left it exposed, which is a nightmare. I've never had such a nightmare firing in my life. It's horrible. Doggone it. Horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Worst ever. Doggone it. So the risk of an exposed organic paint firing like this is, one, that you're going to oxidize the minerals in there, that the whites won't come out white, they'll come out beige or cream or yellow because they will oxidize from all the exposure to air. The second is that you will burn out that organic paint. So the reason we're firing in a pit is we're trying to keep that organic paint from burning out, from oxidizing. And again, exposure to oxygen. So at this point, I've pretty much decided that the firing is a disaster and it's not going to come out good. But there's nothing to do but just go forward with it. So I place these cover sherds around the pot to protect it from the dirt, and I go ahead with the smothering step, which is the next step in this sort of firing, and just hope that when it comes out of the firing, there's something redeemable about it. Out of a year with its share of bad firings, that might be the worst. Although we can't really judge it until we take it out of the firing. I mean, it's possible, although unlikely, that everything's going to come out just perfect. I have to wait a couple hours for this to cool down enough that I can pull it out without re-oxidizing the irons in that slip. The whole idea behind the Ancient Pottery Challenge is a way for me to engage with you, the viewers of my channel. So I announce the pots I'm going to make at the beginning of the season, and then I make those throughout the course of the season. Meanwhile, those of you that are interested make those same pots, upload photos of those pots to Instagram with the hashtag Ancient Pottery Challenge, and then at the end of the season, this video, I share those with you. So here's some of the people that participated this year by making some of the pots in the Ancient Pottery Challenge. As you can see, there's some really talented potters out there who are doing some amazing work. I've been doing the Ancient Pottery Challenge for the last 3 years on my channel, and I think over time, I've had less and less participation. So I feel like there were a lot more people participating the first year I did it, when I had fewer subscribers and fewer viewers overall than this year. I don't know exactly what that means, if that means people are less engaged, or perhaps less of you are really interested in making pottery and more interested in just watching me make pottery. Or perhaps the challenges become harder over time and they're more challenging for those of you out there.
But at any rate, I feel like the Ancient Pottery Challenge has kind of run its course. After 3 years and dwindling participation, I'm not going to do it next season. Well, really this season. This is around the beginning of my 6th season on YouTube, and I think I'm going to do something different. I'll still do replica pots, but I won't announce them in a big video at the beginning and then try to get those all done by the end. I'll make them as I have time and release those videos. But I'm not going to ask you to participate because obviously a lot of people aren't really interested. All right, we're going to see what we got. It's been in here for close to 3 hours. There's the top of the pot right there. Yeah. Might be surprised. It looks like it might actually be not as bad as I thought. You can see we've got good black. Wiping that ash off, the way this organic paint works is you get a layer of ash on top of it, so it looks white or gray at first, and then when you wipe it off, you got black. Came out pretty good, I think. It's got a little ash still on it. When I get home, I'll clean it up a little bit, and I'll take some pictures of it with the other Ancient Pottery Challenge pots from this season, and I'll put those at the end of the video. So if you want to see that, all 7 of those pots together, make sure you watch to the end. But yeah, you know, I have no experience firing smothered organic paint pottery. It's very different from the Salato organic paint pottery I usually make. And so my first attempt was a complete disaster. Oh, son of a gun! Once my mug blew up in my firing, I made another one like it, took it to the kiln conference and had it fired by people with a lot of experience with smothered organic, and it came out great, as you can see in this picture. But it's dark. It's got quite a bit of carbon on it. And here's mine, and yeah, you know, it's got carbony places. It's not pure white all the way around like I would like, but I have less carbon on this than the pot that was fired at the kiln conference by people with experience. So I'm happy. Fired hard. Great way to end the Ancient Pottery Challenge this season, so super happy about that. If you enjoy these videos where I make pottery, you want to see that one where I blew up those pots, I go into a little more depth about organic painted pottery and kind of the history of that. You should check that out. I'll link that up right over here. So I appreciate you coming with me today. I'll catch you next time.